People love saying they've changed. That's one of the easiest things in the world to say. I'm different now. I swear I'm not like that anymore. I promise this time for real. I know I messed up, but I've changed. You've heard that line before. Everyone has. And most of the time, it means nothing. That's what makes this topic so frustrating. Because technically, yes, people can change. A bad friend can become a good one. A liar can become honest. A cheater can become loyal. A drunk can become sober. A lazy person can become productive. A toxic person can become kind. Anybody can become better. That's not the hard part. The hard part is that most people don't. And people hate admitting that. They want to believe that saying sorry means something. They want to believe that guilt means something. They want to believe that somebody crying, begging, promising, swearing means they've turned into a new person. A person is not changed because they said the right words in an emotional moment. A person is changed when their behavior stays different after the emotion is gone. That's the real test. Because anybody can say beautiful things when they're about to lose something. Anybody can swear they'll change when the consequences actually hit them. That doesn't prove character, that proves panic. And panic is not the same thing as change. That's why so many people get fooled. They don't fall for real growth, they fall for a performance of guilt. They hear the apology, they see the tears, they hear the promise, they want to believe it. And sometimes they believe it because they're good people, sometimes because they're attached, sometimes because they don't want to let go, sometimes because they remember who the person used to be. So they give them another chance. Then a few days pass, maybe a week or two. The energy dies down, life goes back to normal, the pressure fades, and slowly the same person comes back. That's how you know most people weren't changing. They were reacting. That's a massive difference. A reaction is quick, but change is slow. A reaction sounds good, but change looks boring. A reaction happens when the person is scared. Change keeps going when nobody's watching. That's what people keep missing. They think the big emotional moment is the proof. It isn't. The proof is what happens later. What happens on a random day when nothing dramatic is going on. What happens when nobody's about to leave them. What happens when the guilt is gone. What happens when they're back in the same situation that used to bring the worst out of them. That's where people show who they really are. And this matters in every kind of relationship. Friendships, dating, family, business, everything. Take a toxic friend, for example. They disrespect you, they talk behind your back, they act weird when good things happen to you, they switch up when other people are around. Then when you finally pull away, suddenly they become self-aware. Now they say that they've changed. Now they say they missed the friendship. Now they say we're in a bad place. Now they say they're working on themselves. Maybe they are, who knows, but you shouldn't trust the speech. You should trust the pattern. Because one of the biggest mistakes people make is giving trust back too quickly just because somebody finally said what they should have said a long time ago. Words are cheap, especially when somebody is losing access to you. That's when people suddenly become poets. That's when they finally know how to explain themselves. That's when they suddenly realize how much you meant to them. That's when they suddenly discover growth. But that doesn't impress me at all. What impresses me is somebody changing before they are forced to. That means something. Changing because you got caught is one thing. Changing because you got tired of your own behavior is different. That's much rarer. And that's why I think people should stop being so easily moved by promises. Because promises are usually made in the hottest point of the moment. The person is emotional, they're scared, they're desperate, they don't want to lose the relationship, the friendship, the safety, whatever it is. So they say everything right. And then everybody around them gets tricked into thinking something real happened. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Time is what tells you, not emotion. And this gets even more serious in actual relationships. Because this is where people really lose their mind. A girl cheats on a guy, or the opposite, a guy cheats on a girl. The person gets caught, then the speech begins. I made a mistake, I didn't mean to do it. I don't know what was wrong with me. I swear I'll never do it again. I've changed. Can somebody really change from something like cheating? Yes, they can. I genuinely believe people can come back from horrible things. I don't think cheating permanently locks someone into being evil forever. I think people can become better. I think people can grow. I think people can become honest from being dishonest. I think people can become loyal after being disloyal. But the question is not can they. The question is whether you should sit there and wait to find out. That's where people get confused. Because forgiving someone and trusting someone are not the same thing. You can forgive a person in your heart and still never let them close to you again. That's not bitterness, that's intelligence. A lot of people think being understanding means you'll keep giving access. You don't, especially not after repeated behavior. If someone cheated once, maybe they can really change. Well, but really rarely. If someone cheated, begged, got another chance, and then cheated again, now you're not dealing with a person who made one horrible choice. Now you're dealing with a pattern. And patterns matter more than promises. Always. That's one of the biggest points of this whole video. Anybody can be forgiven. Not everybody should be trusted again. That is real life. And some people watching this need to hear that because they keep confusing mercy with weakness. They think being kind means letting the same person hurt them again and again while they keep waiting for some magical transformation that will never fully arrive. At some point, you're not being understanding anymore. You're just being available to people who haven't earned it. That's why second chances are one thing. But third, fourth, fifth, sixth chances usually mean you're lying to yourself. Because by then, you don't need more promises. You've already seen the person under pressure. You've already seen the apology. You've already seen the reset. And you've already seen how long it lasts. So why are you still acting surprised? That goes for cheating, toxic relationships. That goes to the people who drink every weekend, wreck their life, swear they're done, then go right back the second Friday comes around. That kind of person is everywhere. They hit rock bottom every month. They say this is the last time every month. They act like they've had some huge breakthrough every month. Then the cycle repeats. That's because saying I'm done is easy when you feel disgusted with yourself. The real question is what happens when the pain fades and temptation comes back. That's where people tell the truth without talking. And most people fail there. Because they never wanted to become different deeply enough. They just wanted the discomfort to stop. That's another important difference. A lot of people don't want to change. They want relief. They want the fight to stop. They want the consequences to go away. They want people to stop being mad. They want the relationship back. They want to not feel guilty. That's not the same thing as wanting to become better. Real change usually starts when a person gets sick of themselves, not just sick of the consequences. The consequences can wake someone up, that's true, but if they still secretly like being who they are, nothing serious is going to ever happen. The person who cheats and secretly still loves the attention will do it again. The person who drinks every weekend and still thinks that life is fun deep down will go back to it. The toxic friend who still enjoys being messy, jealous, and weird will return to it, because behavior always returns to what the person still values. That's why changing for other people usually doesn't last. Sure, it can start with somebody telling you to change, but if it stays there, it usually falls apart. Because eventually the relationship pressure goes away, the fear goes away, the person relaxes, and they slide back right into themselves. That's why someone should never build their whole change around keeping another person. They have to build it around becoming someone they can actually respect. That's much stronger, and it lasts longer too, because now the reason is inside them, not hanging off someone else's approval. And you can tell the difference. A person changing for appearances always talks more. A person changing for real usually becomes quieter. They stop making speeches. They stop trying to convince everybody. They stop needing credit for every tiny improvement. They just become more stable. That's something else people miss. Real change isn't usually loud. It doesn't always come with some big emotional explanation. Sometimes it just looks like this. They stop lying. They stop cheating. They stop drinking. They delete Snapchat. They stop making excuses. They stop disappearing every time things get hard. Then you cut to 6 months later and they're genuinely a different person. That's real. Slow, unflashy, repeated, consistent. That's why I don't think people should judge change by intensity. Judge it by length. How long has the person been different? How have they handled pressure since then? How do they act when life gets boring again? How do they act when nobody's praising them? How do they act when they're back around the same temptations? That tells you so much more than an apology ever will. And I also think something has to be said for self-respect. Some of you guys are so focused whether the other person can change that you forget to ask whether you should still be around when they figure it out. That question matters, because your life isn't a rehab center for every broken person who says the right lines. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to say, maybe you really will change, but I'm not staying around to get hurt while you figure it out. That's not cruel. That's called a boundary, and a lot of good people need to learn that. So can people change? Yes, absolutely. I believe that fully. People can become better, people can heal, people can grow out of awful habits, people can become loyal, honest, calm, sober, disciplined, trustworthy. That part is really possible. But possibility means nothing by itself. A lot of things are possible. The question is whether the person is serious enough, uncomfortable enough, and honest enough to live through the long, boring, repetitive process that change actually takes. Most people are not. That's the part nobody likes saying. Not because people are doomed, but because most people are weak for longer than they are inspired. That's why promises mean so little. Promises are made in minutes. Change is proven in months or years. That's the ratio people keep forgetting. So when someone tells you they've changed, don't fight them, don't argue, don't mock them, just watch. Time exposes everything. If it's real, you'll see it. If it's fake, you'll see that too. And if you're the one making the promise, then remember this. The person you're trying to convince matters less than the person you have to become after the conversation ends. Because once the tears dry up, once the guilt settles down, once the room gets quiet, nobody is clapping for your apology anymore. There's only one thing left that counts. What you do next. That's where change lives. Not in what you said, or what you promised, or how you felt, but in what you repeated long enough for it to become actually true.